Remember the final scene from Steven Spielberg's classic 1980 sci-fi fantasy film Back to the Future? Doc comes flying in on his DeLorean, and as it settles slowly onto the driveway, he jumps out and heads for the trash can, where he extracts several pieces of household garbage, which he then proceeds to feed into the DeLorean's engine. When Marty, played by Michael J. Fox, inquires as to what he's doing, he replies, "In the future, everything runs on garbage." Back in the 80s, I'm sure everyone in the theater thought, as I did, well, wouldn't that be great? We wouldn't be so dependent on oil, coal, or nuclear power, and with a growing world population, the endless supply of garbage would fill all of our energy needs. And no more slurry spills, oil slicks, or poisonous landfills. Well, the future is here, and it's up and running on a mountaintop in the heart of the East Kentucky coal fields in Martin County. Garbage to energy and recyclable products is the latest technological innovation in a world that is beginning to desperately look for other power sources, such as windmills and solar panels. Here then is a simple tour and explanation of what we call the gasification process that turns garbage into, among other things, electric gold. First, trucks loaded with municipal solid waste, which from here on we'll refer to as MSW, pass through the waste station as they enter the facility grounds or leave with recyclables, or as we like to call it, beneficial reuse product. After the weigh-in, they proceed to the tipping floor storage area where the MSW is dumped into a huge gymnasium-sized building. Here it is scooped up by an inloader and transferred to a feeder belt that deposits it into a dryer for fluffing and drying. One of the problems with recycling household or industrial garbage, and why it never caught on with the masses, is that it required a bin for bottles and glass, a bin for tin cans, a bin for plastic bottles of every kind, and a bin for compost and organics. One had to sort through this mess and keep everything separate. And if you wanted to throw out that old couch or microwave, you had to set it out on the curb at the appropriate times for pickup. But no more. Here at the gasification facility, everything gets piled onto the feeder belt, and the miracle of modern technology does the rest. After the drying process, the belt delivers the MSW into the gasifier. Without being too technical, the gasifier heats the MSW to over 700 degrees Fahrenheit for over an hour, during which time everything soft and organic, from banana peels and dead animal carcasses to plastic bottles and the rubber seals inside your oil filter, are turned into a hot gas. We'll come back and talk about what happens to that gas later, but for now the MSW moves out of the gasifier completely sterile and clean and ready to be recycled. The next stop, as it travels along the beltway, is to have all ferrous materials like iron and steel plucked from the other refuse. This is done by a conveyor belt that passes over the MSW traveling belt at a right angle and so strongly magnetized that the ferrous metal seems to leap to life and jump onto the bottom of the magnetized belt, which then carries the material outside to be dumped onto the ferrous metal pile. Everything from car rims and propane tanks to these crumpled up bed springs winds up here, clean, sterile, and ready for recycling. In fact, this stuff is so clean your 2-year-old could safely play with it. Meanwhile, the first conveyor belt loaded with the original MSW is being sorted. Aluminum, tin, copper, and a host of other metals winds up in their own recycling bin, while glass and porcelain products are pulverized into a silica dust that, after being deposited onto its own pile outside, is then transferred to a facility where it becomes a part of the concrete mixture that, in this case, is used to build concrete septic tanks. And you've heard the old saying, no stone left unturned. Well, here it's no metal, no matter how small, gets left out. From safety pins and paper clips to coins of all denominations. Everything goes through the gasification process and is recycled. Silica dust for concrete, sterile aluminum, tin, and copper, and clean ferrous metals are now ready for recycling back into useful products for society. Products that could one day wind up right back here on one of their prospective piles. But there is a fourth product here, and one that may be the most valuable of all. Remember all that gas created from the organics, plastics, and rubber back in the gasifier? Well, it is transferred by heavy pipe to the boiler room, where through chemical and mechanical processes, and again, not to get too technical, it ends up powering huge turbines that in turn produce electricity that can be sent out to power plants that will eventually turn on the lights in your home. And all aspects of the gasification facility and its processes are overseen in the control room via computer and video monitors. And as for emissions, well, here's the smokestack at the end of the line that vents into the air. On the day we videoed the facility, it was working as normal, and this is how the stack looked during that process. But emissions, though negligible, are constantly being monitored by pumps implanted in the sides of the stack, and information is constantly sent back to central control. Folks, it all comes down to this. We now have choices to make concerning the future of our society, which is now caught up in a consumption and waste product cycle that endangers not only our environment, but our very life on this planet. On so many levels, the solid waste gasification process offers solutions that were only dreamed of in science fiction just a few short years ago. Garbage or recyclable ferrous metals? Garbage or silica dust used in concrete? Garbage or recyclable tin and aluminum? And garbage or energy to power our future? And the future is now.